Hello and welcome to the April episode of Founders Unfiltered. I am your host, Freddie Coffee, and with me today is Afif Ghannoum, co-founder and CEO of BIOHM Health, a Cleveland-based microbiome data company with a successful consumer products arm that produces supplements for digestive health. Afif is a biotechnology lawyer by training and an entrepreneur at heart, and he co-founded Biome with his father, Dr. Mahmoud Ghannoum, a professor with University Hospital's Case Medical Center and a globally recognized leader in microbiome research. Afif and his team just closed a bridged fundraising round to fund clinical studies and grow their business-to-business strategy. We'll hear more about that and a lot more today. Afif, welcome to Founders Unfiltered.
Thanks for having me.
I have a lot of questions for you today. I'm really happy that you're with us. I want to get right into it. Let's start talking about your company. Give me that elevator pitch for BIOHM Health.
Yeah, so Biome is a microbiome data company. So what we basically do is utilize actual microbiome data, meaning seeing what the organisms in people's guts are in order to create the next generation of microbiome formulations, ingredients, that sort of things. Why that's important is the microbiome is increasingly tied to all areas of wellness, from our skin to obviously our stomachs, even the air in our homes. There's a microbiome, so it's an increasingly important area that needs innovation.
Well, you've got me now thinking about what's going on with the air in this room right now, and we're going to get into talking about microbiome and health and stuff like that, and Biome and your plans to scale. But let's start with your story. You must love entrepreneurship to make the leap from a career in law. Tell me about that move and your background as a biotechnology attorney and how that informs your work at Biome.
Yeah, absolutely. So there were really two factors that came into play. One, I really started the early part of my legal career in the middle of the financial crisis, like 2007, 2008 was, when I was still a young attorney. And, when I entered law in 2005, I was at Squire Sanders and Dempsey, now Squire Patton Boggs, one of the very large national law firms. And then I was at Baker Hostetler. And those are the types of jobs that, especially in law school, they're viewed as extremely secure, extremely good jobs, right? And so in the middle of the financial crisis, I saw even these types of jobs, like it's not guaranteed, right? So that was my first sort of view of, a corporate type setting is not necessarily less risky than trying to pursue your own, entrepreneurism. The other thing, as a corporate lawyer, I was helping people realize their dreams in business. And, I worked on everything from gigantic deals where we helped Cedar Fair buy a bunch of different amusement parks to, small entrepreneurs that were successful, but they needed legal help. And at the same time, I had always wanted to do my own thing. And so I saw some of the innovations and science that my dad was working on and thought, it would be really fun to work together. So we took the leap. And I walked away from, a secure job, but knock on wood, so far it's been a good choice for me.
So there are probably a million answers to this next question, but how is your role as a startup co-founder different from any of the from law or any other roles you've had in the past?
So the first is that you have to be very comfortable with being uncomfortable. Every day is sincerely different. And, I even this morning, and we're years into Biome, I was updating our science activity tracker, making calls to potential customers and dealing with, fundraising issues. And that's, it's 11 a.m., right? So that's the thing. You just have to be very comfortable that it's unpredictable by nature. And, if you do anything or are familiar with the area, it's a lot of peaks and valleys. And that's truly the nature of the beast.
So you co-founded Biome with your father, Dr. Ghannoum. You guys have an established family there with doctors and lawyers and everything. What's it like to run a business with your dad?
It's a lot of fun because he still is he still runs labs at both Case and UH. And so it's really worked because one, he's truly one of my best friends. We really get along. I've been traveling with him since I was a little kid. And our last trip was, 2 weeks ago to California for a conference. The key, I think, to our success in it is that we really have our own lanes. You know what I mean? Like he's on sort of the academic science side of it. I'm running the business where, I've seen people run into issues on the family business side is one, it's really not clear who's running what roles. And two, they don't actually get along as well as they want to. They love the idea of a family business, but they don't actually really get along. So for us, that's really been a huge part of it.
I have to imagine that working on, some of the high profile transactional deals and cases and things like that you mentioned with Cedar Fair and things like that in your law career prepped you for an executive leadership role in a startup. So I'm thinking that, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm thinking that might have been a pretty natural transition. But what characteristics or skill sets did you need to develop to be a leader at Biome?
Yeah, so on the law, it definitely really set me up well for a couple of reasons. One, law is all critical thinking. You really are doing tons and tons of analysis. A lot of my role was in diligence, things like that. And in the world, especially as you start scaling, raising money, that's a huge part of what you're doing in fundraising. The other is I knew what I knew about legal issues, and then I was also aware of what I didn't know, and then I would get help. That's where I see a lot of people run into issues where they try and do something, with the paperwork for investing just to save money, not realizing it's a potential huge issue down the road. So those were things early on I knew, look, we got to, do these things properly. But the part that probably was the hardest was, in startup world, if you're not able to ring the register in raising capital, finding customers for your business, it's very difficult. You know what I mean? Like, especially in an area like Cleveland where you really are rewarded for traction in the business. Versus, what I'd say is vision, where on the West, East Coast, people are able to sometimes raise giant amounts of money on truly an idea, but they haven't executed against it, So for me, that was just very eye-opening, was that the more we're able to actually close transactions, bring in customers, it's just going to make our life easier scaling.
So let's switch gears a little bit from talking about you and your entrepreneurial journey and jump into the microbiome. Yeah. This is a big topic. We could probably spend a couple episodes on this alone. The idea that you see all this, just even as a layperson, you see all this research out there that the gut can be a second brain, and that your microbiome health is related to all the other systems. But can you share a little bit about the science and the pain point that Biome seeks to solve there?
Yeah, great question. So the way I would describe the microbiome is a lot of the science points to the fact that the microbiome is core to overall wellness. It's almost easier to point to conditions that are not impacted by the microbiome than to talk about the ones that are tied to it, But the way I describe it is that it's like we're in cancer research in the 60s. We know it's critically important. We know there's innovation, but it's still very early days. So one of the things, especially for consumers, and anybody looking at the space is I'm always wary of people who overpromise what's capable by adjusting the microbiome. The reality is we don't know. We're finding a lot of the correlation. There's a lot of strong science, but it's still early days. So the way we look at it, though, is that in response, food companies, supplement companies, even pharmaceutical companies are realizing they have to have a microbiome strategy. They have to make foods that are, gentler on the stomach, skin care products that take care of the germs on your skin, even obviously supplements that don't cause all sorts of digestive issues. The problem is for those types of companies, it's very hard to know how to actually innovate, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the opportunity for us, because we still have this gut test that's like a 23andMe for your gut. And through that, we've generated this extremely large database of microbiome profiles. So what we do then is, let's say we're looking at someone like let's say a company wants to create a product for highly stressed people. What we can do is we can look at our data of only the highly stressed people and look at what organisms are an issue for them. Maybe they're very high in one and very low in the other. And then we can create a formulation to actually adjust a highly stressed gut. That innovation is very enticing to industry because then they don't have to do a lot of trial and error to hopefully find something that works to, help someone who's stressed. They can get a running start with our data insights. So that's the opportunity because it's very difficult. The other thing about the microbiome, people have digestive issues for all sorts of reasons. It can be because you're stressed, it can be genetics, it can be your diet. So it's not like inner ear ringing where it's very acute and there might be one solution to it. You really don't know why someone's having these issues. So if we're able to offer a much more targeted approach, that's very enticing to industry.
I have to imagine, Afif, that probably everyone in your data set is high stressed after the last 2 years. But let's talk about the evolution of that data impacting the way that digestive health products are made. How do you see that working? That the more that data that you guys are able to compile, and the more that you're able to learn, how will that change how these products are made?
That's a great question. So the short answer is it will allow us to more refine the data, right? So when you go from 5,000 people in a data cohort to 50,000 people, you're going to see much more nuanced things. The other things that we're starting to apply is AI to the analysis to see if we can predict what organisms are indicative of various conditions, demographics. So as we continue to see innovation on that front, that's going to make it much more interesting on the product development front. Because right now, most people don't realize this, the ingredients that go in like functional foods, supplements, even if they have a clinical trial, which most of the time they don't, but even if they do, that's based on like 30 to 50 people that they recruit at one specific spot. And there's all sorts of data showing that most people in clinical trials, look like the same people, right? It's not really representative of the true population. Whereas when we're doing an analysis, sometimes depending on the cohort, it can be 8,000 people that you're doing the analysis of, right? So when you develop ingredients with that level of data versus putting an ingredient through a 30 to 50 person clinical trial as your first step, you can just see that chances are you're going to have a better shot on goal at making an actually efficacious product.
So you're set up as a consumer products company. Can you talk more about how the science and the data that you guys are using there plays into the company's, not just the products themselves, but the company's model as a consumer products company?
Yeah, so we have a full range of products on biohmhealth.com, and increasingly we're going into retail. We're also going into the practitioner channel. But these are products that are based on our initial Biome formulation, where we showed that we were able to break down very aggressive digestive biofilms. And a biofilm is like a plaque. The plaque most people are familiar with is dental plaque, right? So the problem with plaques is it's not the plaque itself, it's that underneath the plaque, they're hiding and protecting very aggressive organisms. So you want to break that plaque and get to what's going on underneath. That's what we're doing in the gut, where there's biofilms forming that we're breaking down to be able to balance what's going on underneath. So we have a whole range of products, we have tests, but increasingly the business is going to more of a Intel Inside model where we want to power other people's microbiome innovations because, we could create a protein powder and sell 100,000 pounds a year. Other ingredient guys sell 25,000 metric tons of protein. Like we would never be able to do that kind of scale. So, for us, that's the real opportunity.
So you completed a couple of exciting clinical trials recently. You mentioned the clinical trials a minute ago. Can you share more about the information you're gathering from those trials?
Yeah, so we had a very successful first clinical trial where we showed that we're able to adjust the microbiota, which means we can take someone from baseline, their microbiome looking like this, and adjust it, positively over here, especially when it comes to candida in their gut. And the second one, which I can't share too much about, but what I can tell you is we found that therapeutically, we found that Biome had a very positive impact. So we're going through right now to see what type of marketing claims we can make with that data, but we're very, very pleased with the data, and we have a whole clinical trial pipeline.
So this isn't your first endeavor in healthcare commercialization either. I'm sure you brought a great deal of know-how to Biome from your previous experience. Can you touch on the process of really bringing science to consumers and what resources you need to leverage to get your products to the market, even if you're not just doing those protein powders for 100,000 people?
Yeah, so when it comes down to marketing consumer health products, the trickiest part is the marketing claims and how they tie to the FDA, FTC as well, but the FDA. So if you're, for example, and this is the example I always give. If you have, I know a woman who sells a product that's supposed to help your eyebrow hair, which for women is a big deal. And if you say this product makes your eyebrows thicker, that's a drug claim, and you have to go through full FDA approval. If you say this product makes your eyebrows appear thicker, that's a cosmetic claim. You don't have to do any testing, right? It still has to be true, but like that little nuance in the language, that's why when you see, if you pay attention to labeling, it says things like supports gut health, or this may, there's all sorts of qualifiers. It's very purposeful. So really one of the trickiest things that a lot of people run into is that you really have to understand the regulatory schema you're dealing with. That's very important. So really it falls into cosmetics, which is basically something that, at a high level description, alters the appearance of your skin. So like lotions, obviously makeup, things like that. Then there's OTC drugs. OTC drugs are, toothpaste or things that have a medical claim, but usually they're so deeply embedded science, and the safety is very strong that FDA lets you just buy it at the store. So easy examples: toothpaste, mouthwash, things like that.
Sure.
Then there's dietary supplements, which is basically things that they're supposed to supplement your diet, right? That's everything from vitamin C to obviously probiotics, things like that. And then there's obviously drugs you have to go through approval. Now, whether you are a cosmetic, a drug, a dietary supplement, or an OTC often depends on the types of claims you're making. So going back to one of your first questions, that's where my legal background really has helped. Yeah. Because it's a very treacherous area if you're not careful.
That leads me to kind of another question, I think, along those lines, in that and your legal background has to really help you with this when you're navigating what you're allowed to say, what you're not allowed to say. If you go too far into magical claims or things like that, there's definitely a stigma around supplements and things like that they that they don't do what they say they do, or that sort of thing. How do you walk that fine line? Because you're obviously doing these trials and developing a viable product. How do you walk that fine line from a marketing standpoint to be seen as and known as credible?
Yeah. It's constantly a balance. So we have regulatory consultants that help us think through that. Me and our COO have a lot of background in those types of regulations. But it can be frustrating at times because you'll see other people making crazy claims and getting a lot of traction,
right? And
no one seems to call them out on it. So, but for us, we just take long-term thinking that we're trying to build something that's valuable, that's science-based, and that as a result, your claims have to be within limits. The other thing is consumers aren't stupid. If you are saying things, especially in the age of Facebook ads, where you'll see in the comments, people are like, I just don't believe this. You know what I mean? So the more science-backed and you share that with the consumer, the more trustworthy they are. And by the way, it's not just about clinical trials. Like increasingly, people want to know, where are you making these products? Is it made in America? Is it made in Asia? Like India, these are concerns people have. Is it non-GMO? When we first started creating products, 10 plus years ago, that was never a question. Consumers didn't really care. Now, people are very, very, very picky about what ingredients. So that's the other thing is we ferment all our probiotics in Wisconsin. We fill them in Utah or Missouri. Like, it's all in America, right? Like, that's something that consumers really like.
That's a great point. I think that's something that through a customer and marketing validation process, you guys have probably found out that the people that are in the market and care about gut health, microbiome, any kind of physical improvement type of thing are probably very shrewd customers around what they're putting in their body.
Totally.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's switch gears again and go from the one side of being an entrepreneur, which is your product, to the other side, which is money. You guys recently closed a bridge round, so congratulations on that. Can you talk a little bit about that fundraising round?
Yeah, so we brought in some really great new investors, the University Hospital Ventures, Jumpstart, Jobs Ohio with the state of Ohio, and then rounded out with internal investors. And so we've have currently one outside of them institutional investor, a venture capital fund out of New York called Ventera Capital. But beyond that, we've had a lot of support, especially from the angel community in Cleveland. And so it's especially like a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to raise a dollar when I'm building a business. It really depends what you're trying to do. If you're doing a product or a company that does have a lot of science or is capital intensive equipment, you almost have no choice but to raise money. Yeah. It's just the reality of it. But dealing with investors and raising money, it is a whole discipline in and of itself.
So you mentioned Jumpstart, of course. Our role in that was through the Healthcare Collaboration Fund. That was our participation in that round. For anybody that doesn't know, that fund is managed in partnership with UH Ventures. How do partnerships with investors and healthcare institutions support growth beyond the funding?
No, it's a great question. So first, it brings a lot of validation to what you're doing. Like, these are very sophisticated entities, and when we're talking to a customer and they're like, "Oh, University Hospital Ventures invested," that's meaningful. Especially in a space like you were saying, like supplements, where there's a lot of aggressive claims. People don't quite know. It's a very important point of validation. The other is obviously a partner like University Hospitals. We can do studies with them. We can look to them for KOLs. They're seeing the latest and greatest in the science. So it just makes for a very sophisticated partner if you're in that health world, which obviously we are.
What was the most challenging part for you in raising the round?
So this round was actually fairly simple. I think the toughest part of raising capital is two parts. One, when you're first getting started, and especially if it's your first time around, it can feel very lonely and very difficult. So what we found was that we had the best traction raising initially very small amounts, in the $10,000 to $25,000 level. But then as we continue to get traction, that's where we were able to raise larger amounts. So the first that I think is just very tricky, and you just have to talk to a lot of people, be used to getting people say no, be careful about people wasting your time, and then just slowly but surely raise money. The other is when you're in the middle of like a growth phase, because now it's the difference between when you're starting, it's Christmas Eve, and it's really about the potential of the next morning and all the presents you're gonna get. But when you're in the growth phase, they're like, okay, what do the presents look like? And can I see your traction? Like, that's what they're investing on, so those are the two, I think, most difficult times, to raise.
So just completed the bridge round. That spans the gap to the next thing you're going to do. So what is next for Biome?
So now we are heads down trying to complete clinicals, trying to continue to close big B2B partnerships. That's how we build the value of the business. And so that's the entire focus of the business. Obviously, we continue to build the consumer side. We have a team who does that. But, this business will grow and become, knock on wood, one of the leading microbiome platforms based on our partnerships with industry.
I think there's a lot of optimism around where you guys are headed, and it's always great to stop on a high note. So we're going to take a little break here, and we will return with our Founders Fast 5 questions, our lightning round, right after this quick break with Afif Ghannoum of Biome. Stick around. Thanks again for tuning into this episode of Founders Unfiltered. And this is normally the time in the show that I invite you to join us next month for Founders Unfiltered. But this time, I'm really inviting you to join us next month, because this summer we're bringing Founders Unfiltered, our series of candid conversations with startup founders, back to the stage in real life, in person. After 12 months of this virtual webcast format, we're hosting our first in-person interview since 2020 with Josh Reed, CEO of Dayton-based Influ. Influ is an AI-driven social media amplification and management platform, and it's recently celebrated a few major milestones, including a new partnership with Houston-based Whataburger and a pre-seed and seed fundraising round. We'll hear more about these successes and Josh's journey from marketing agency owner to tech entrepreneur. So sign up to join us in person on May 19th for drinks, networking, and information sharing at this live event. It's Founders Unfiltered IRL, May 19th, and we hope that you'll register today. Now let's get back to Afif. Welcome back to Founders Unfiltered. It is time for our Founders Fast Five, our lightning round with Afif Ghannoum of Biome. Afif, here's how it's going to work. We've got 6 questions. You have to answer 5 of them. You have one pass you can use. If you answer all 6, then you'll win a prize, which is going to be some FDA-approved toothpaste or something, since you mentioned that earlier, and we'll send it over to you. All right? You ready?
I'm ready.
Great. Let's kick it off. So what is one thing that keeps you up at night?
Cash.
I like that answer. Short and sweet. What's the best advice you've received to date?
Raise more than you need and expect it to take twice as long as you expect.
What one word best describes how you work?
Intense focus.
That's 2 words, but we'll let it pass.
Okay.
What are you currently reading right now?
It's right here. The Discourses by Epictetus.
Do you recommend it?
It's the best book I've ever read.
Well, I guess that's a pretty good recommendation. What apps, software, tools can you just absolutely not live without?
Captio, which is a note-taking app that lets me send notes directly to my email inbox. Obviously, Shopify. The snooze feature of Outlook, so I can come back to emails. Those are probably the biggest ones.
Excellent. And finally, this is a very selfish question. It's your last question, so you're going to answer them all, I think. They say that the best vitamins and supplements and that sort of thing are the ones that you take regularly. I am a gummy vitamin addict. Is Biome going to come out with gummies?
Read between the lines.
All right, that is it. You are through our lightning round, our Founders Fast 5, which you actually answered all 6 of them. Afif, I want to thank you for coming on Founders Unfiltered with us. I also want to point out, last month I talked to Dr. Dan Gurman from OrthoBrain, so we've had a lot of really cool health tech and biotech and stuff founders recently. He always wears a bow tie, and I purposely wore a bow tie on the episode with him. I did not coordinate the see-through frames with you today, but and the stripes. But I think if anything, we're at the height of startup fashion as well. So
right, hobo chic.
So again, Afif, thank you so much for coming on with us. We really appreciate it, and we wish you and your father and Biome nothing but the best. Any parting last words from you?
Be patient. It's a long road, but it's definitely rewarding.
Afif, I want to thank you again, and also extend a big thank you to you, our audience, wherever you're watching from. And a reminder that Jumpstart combines capital, services, and connections to help entrepreneurs grow. No matter where you are in your entrepreneurial journey, we are here and we are ready to help. You can learn more, get connected, and get started today on our website at jumpstartinc.org. Thanks again, and we hope to see you next month live for our first in-person Founders Unfiltered. Have a great day.